Hello everyone, today I will recap you a movie titled Troy. The most interesting story dates back 3,200 years ago. King Agamemnon of Mycenae enters into an alliance with the Greek kingdoms only. Thessaly remained unconquered. Meanwhile, the dog who was walking in the desert managed to discover the obvious elements of a recent battle on this land, but soon he hears the noise of newly arrived troops, which turned out to be quite a lot. The leaders of the two sides, meeting in the center of the field of the upcoming battle, decide to arrange a battle of the best soldiers in order not to lose the number of troops. Paris from Thessaly immediately left the system, while Achilles is in the company of a wonderful girl, but a messenger boy disturbs his sleep, and Achilles has to quickly jump on his horse and go to his king. When he sees his opponent, he has no fear, but he is about to leave the fight after the angry words of the royal ward about his lateness. However, the king of Thessaly, Triopas, wants to do without losses and motivates the fighter to attack. So after 2 spear misses, Achilles strikes a quick blow and the enemy falls. After that, our main character, showing no desire to hand over the scepter to the winner, leaves the arena. Arriving in the city, the Spartan King Menelaus arranges a feast in honor of 2 Trojan princes, brothers Hector and Paris, who concluded the long-awaited peace of Sparta and Troy. When Paris notices that Menelaus's wife Helen is leaving the feast, he follows her upstairs. It turns out that they recently had a secret affair, so after hot pleasures and a gift in the form of a necklace, Paris finally invites the girl to sail with him to Troy. The events are transferred to Hector's ship, who soon learns about their new crew in the form of Helen. He immediately orders to return, and Menelaus himself has already learned from the fishermen where Helen escaped, so he ordered to prepare the ship. Hector orders the ship to turn back to Sparta, while he himself expresses obvious dissatisfaction with his brother's act, but after that decides to give his brother's love a chance and returns the ship to its previous course. Menelaus has already arrived in Mycenae to his elder brother Agamemnon to ask for help in attacking Troy, and the king agrees with the words, "The world is for women and weaklings. Empires are created by war." However, the most crucial moment was revealed when Agamemnon was left alone with his advisor Nestor. His words were, "My brother married a stupid woman, but she turned out to be very useful." Thanks to this phrase, you and I understand that Agamemnon has been planning an attack on Troy for a long time, but Nestor believes that Troy cannot be conquered, which is why they need Achilles. 2 messengers on behalf of Agamemnon turn to Odysseus, whose cunning king the rebellious Achilles can obey. The next day in the Greek Phthia, Achilles coached his cousin Patroclus, who only lost, but Achilles, noticing the enemy, meets him with a sharp greeting. Odysseus seduces the warriors with loud slogans that this war will be remembered for centuries, and their names will burn in the history of mankind. When Odysseus left them, he reminded them that they were leaving in 3 days. Achilles, in search of bright thoughts, goes to the shore, where he can stay at home, get married, have children and be happy, but his name will be forgotten, or he will find eternal glory, which his death holds by the hand. And in the end, Achilles joins his ship to the huge fleet of Greeks, heading for the shores of Troy, where meanwhile, Paris and Hector introduce Helen to their father, King Priam, and Hector rejoices with his newborn son. But left alone with his father, Hector asks for help to send Helen back to Sparta, because this act now threatens their safety, but his father refuses, reinforcing this with the fact that Paris will surely go after her and die, and he clearly does not want to lose his son. Helen also believed that Agamemnon would come to Troy for her, but Paris didn't want to hear it. However, after a while the prediction came true. Hector witnessed the alarm bell about the arrival of Sparta on their territory. Achilles' ship decides to get ahead. The Myrmidonians are the first to land on the shore and engage in an unequal battle with the Trojans. The second, the king of Salamis, Ajax Telamonides, lands on the shore, thereby distracting part of Hector's cavalry. Meanwhile, Achilles decides to change his tactics and breaks through to the temple of Apollo and, after a hard victory, puts it at the disposal of the Myrmidonians. Achilles' assistant Eutorus warns his leader about the wrath of Apollo, to which Achilles smashes his head against the statue of the god. Seeing the approaching troops of Troy, Achilles mows down one of the Trojans with an unprecedented spear throw and orders Eutorus to warn the people. Achilles' troops win a bloody victory, and Hector breaks out into the street, where Achilles decides to let the prince go, because now is not the time to kill them. When Achilles arrives at the camp, The ward brings him to the priestess Briseis for fun, but the girl is angry at the man for desecrating Apollo, as Eudoris immediately appears and calls him to Agamemnon, who, it turns out, decided to record the victory in history, and also take the gold and Briseis for himself. But the girl decides to pacify Achilles, and he can only leave the ward in anger. The next day, a huge Greek army approaches the walls of Troy to avenge everything, and the unarmed Myrmidonians, led by Achilles, are only watching the great battle. The Trojan army enters the battlefield, where Agamemnon offers Hector to give Helen and recognize him as the supreme commander, in which case, the Trojan army will fight for Agamemnon when he orders. Hector, of course, rejects Agamemnon's terms, and Paris challenges Menelaus to battle for Helen. The mighty Menelaus wounds and disarms Paris in a duel, and the boy plaintively hugs Hector's legs, and before Paris's fatal blow, Hector pierces him with a sword, thereby saving his brother. Agamemnon, realizing that the terms of the agreement have been violated, throws his troops forward, so Paris rather grabs his sword and hides on horseback. Agamemnon, struck with anger, sends troops on the offensive. Odysseus and Achilles immediately notice this mistake, because the archers of Troy easily cut out the ranks of the Spartans. Meanwhile, Hector manages to defeat one of the strongest Spartans, Ajax, and after that Odysseus asks Agamemnon to retreat, otherwise he will be left alone on the battlefield. And then Agamemnon decides to go to his ships, and Hector himself gives the order not to pursue the enemy and return to Troy, so that the enemy can pick up the bodies of the dead. After the evening meal, Agamemnon discusses the day with Odysseus. They regret the loss of Menelaus and want to bring Achilles back into battle, and for this, Agamemnon is ready to let go of Briseis, which according to him he never touched a finger. However, it's not like that. She was bullied by soldiers, who were soon beaten by Achilles, and then he took Briseida. In the evening they talked by the light of a lamp about their beliefs, and at night the girl wanted to stab him, but could not resist the ideal Greek man, and in the morning he orders to gather troops and retreat, but Patroclus is visibly dissatisfied with this idea. At this point, Hector decides to stop the offensive and leaves the Spartans, after which Odysseus orders the warriors to quickly assemble for departure. But the most difficult moment comes when Achilles is informed of his brother's death, and the anger of the Greeks becomes impossible to contain. Meanwhile, Hector, realizing the loss of Achilles, decides to show the refugee from Troy his favorite passage in case of his death, and Patroclus is already solemnly burned on the altar. Achilles goes to the walls of Troy at sunrise, challenges Hector to a fight, and kills him in a rather epic duel. He then ties Hector's body by the legs to his chariot and returns to the camp. The king of Troy, Priam, secretly makes his way to Achilles and begs him to give Hector's body for burial. Achilles agrees, gives Hector's body, frees the bride, and declares a 12-day truce. This is how long the mourning lasted for both the Greeks and the Trojans, which leads Agamemnon into a real rage. Late at night, when Achilles was having a dialogue with his advisor, he figured out how to capture Troy. The Trojans managed to calmly carry out the burial ceremony of the great warrior, and after 12 days found a completely empty Greek camp. Only a huge statue of a horse remained. Odysseus has an idea how to take Troy. The priest Archeptolemus claims that this is a sacrifice to the supreme god of the sea, Poseidon. Paris asks Priam to burn the horse, but the king does not listen to his son. The Trojans roll the horse into the city and arrange a holiday, and at night the Greeks hiding inside get out of the horse, kill the sentries, open the gate, and signal from the tower. The Greek army breaks into the city, looting and slaughter begin. Hector's widow Andromache shows the surviving Trojans an underground passage leading beyond the walls of Troy to save the others. But Paris remains. The Greeks break into the palace. Agamemnon finds and kills Priam. Odysseus kills the Trojan commander Glaucus. Then the warrior looks everywhere for Briseis, but first Agamemnon finds her and says that she will become his slave, but the girl inflicts a mortal wound on him, from which he immediately dies. Achilles saves her from the soldiers of Agamemnon, but Paris arrives and shoots the hero with a bow, firing the first arrow into his heel. It is from this case that the stories about the immortality of Achilles and his shot heel are formed. The surviving Trojans see no other way out and leave through an underground passage. And early in the morning, Odysseus sets fire to the burial ground where Achilles' body rests in order to honor the hero with eternal memory.